Wouldn't you like to fix something so that you didn't ever have to fix it again? That sure would be nice. Home repairs. What about, children raising? You just one and done, a simple solution, and their attitudes or behaviors are solved for life. Uh, keep dreaming, right? Adults still struggle with attitudes and behaviors, let alone trying to help kids solve it in a few short years. What about our physical health? You could do a diet, and that can solve something for life. That would be nice. Or just a single pill to solve an entire sickness. We have a couple of those, but oftentimes you can get those sicknesses back again. No, healthy living is sort of just one of those lifelong pursuits, and one that, surprisingly ends the same way no matter what you do. But it's still good to be good stewards of our bodies, of course. Um, but there is sort of this universal end that we can't kind of get out of. And I'll remind you that most of the miracles that Jesus did in his career, in his ministry, they were healing miracles. And today we're going to look at another one. We have been looking at who is Jesus. What picture do we pull into our heads when we think of Jesus? And not just an image, but like the person. What was he like? How would he respond in certain circumstances? In the first 4 weeks, we looked at four of the big titles that are used for Jesus throughout the New Testament. And anytime you run into Jesus, there's an awfully good chance it's going to be one of these four. This is Son of God, the Son of Man, the Messiah or Christ, and the Lord. And then we began looking at some of the things he did in his lifetime, in particular, some of the miracles. And we've looked at calming the storm, feeding the 5,000. Last week, we looked at healing the man born blind, where Jesus introduced the teaching, I am the light. And this week, we're going to look at perhaps his greatest miracle outside of his own resurrection, and also the most consequential miracle of his ministry, and that is the raising of Lazarus. Now, this text comes from John chapter 11. We're going to kind of go through it together, and it's a bit lengthy, so we're going to kind of, like it was last time, we're going to kind of have to kind of hop skip through some of this. It begins in John chapter 11, verse 1. Now, a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. This is the Mary who will anoint Jesus' feet in the next chapter, in chapter 12. And it's her brother who's sick. These are close friends of Jesus. They've done a lot together over the years. So the sisters sent word to Jesus saying, Lord, him who you love is ill. And now you don't go way out of your way to send somebody a couple days journey just to say, hey, he's got a flu or a cold or something. This is like serious. And they're very concerned for him. And Jesus hears it. And what does Jesus respond? When he heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. Okay? It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Jesus is as cryptic as ever, isn't he? But he's saying that the conclusion of this story, it's not death. The conclusion of this story is the glory of God and in the Son of God. And we know that Jesus certainly cares about Lazarus. But why wasn't he healing him? Listen to what the next verse says. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. This is a fairly rare statement. Of course, Jesus loves everybody, but these guys get special mention. He really, really cares about them. So, when he heard that Lazarus was ill, He rushed to their side? No, no. He stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Kind of, kind of hung out and waited. Now, it very well could be that this is rushing because he had a lot to do where he was at, and he sort of cut his trip short, and within 2 days wrapped up all that he was doing and left to go there. And that probably carries more the sense of this text, that he cared about them and he wanted to get back to them, but he did need to take care of some things, and then he made his way. And as we go through the story, you're going to see that he's 2 days away, 2 days journey. So by the time he gets to Lazarus, if you haven't heard this story, I'll spoil it a little bit for you. He does die. Um, he's been dead 4 days by the time he gets back, which means he's already dead by the time this message gets to him, because that's 2 days later, and he's back in 2 days. So him rushing back wasn't going to stop anything. And he could have healed it from a distance. We've seen him do that at times. But this whole story has a much bigger idea and a bigger picture that Jesus is pointing to. And he's going to shoot for the bigger, the greater good. So he stayed where he was for a couple days longer. Then after this, he said to his disciples, "Let's go to Judea again." And the disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and you're going to go right back into the fire?" Jesus was getting heat from the Pharisees and the religious leaders all over, but it was only in Jerusalem that they were trying to kill him up to this point. And this is the place where they are heading back to. So while he got questions and animosity from people around Judea uh, and Samaria, it was the heart of Judea, Jerusalem, where the intensity was the highest. And the disciples are saying, "You want to go in there right now? Things are hot and stirred up." Jesus says, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of the world, of this world. But if anyone walks in night, he stumbles because the light is not in him." After he saying these things, he said to them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him." You remember last week's light of the world? Jesus is pulling that back into this setting. He's saying, "You're with me. My time is not quite yet accomplished. There's still more day left to do work. It's okay for now. So come with me." And he explained that he's going to go wake up Lazarus. The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he'll recover." You ever deal with some people that are slow on the uptake? Uh, they're not quite sensing what Jesus is saying here, and they're like, You might be overdoing it, Jesus. He'll wake up. He'll be fine." Okay. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he meant just like resting and sleep. Jesus kind of just tells them a little bit clearer. He died. Lazarus has died. And for your sake, I'm actually glad that I wasn't there, so that you might believe. Oh, wait a minute. These are the disciples. Of course they believe. Apparently not enough yet. But let us go to him. So Thomas, called the twin, said to his disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." Now, there's a couple ways to see this grammatically. Thomas could be talking about Lazarus or Jesus. Either way you read it, they're heading into Jerusalem, not in sort of optimistic faith, but sort of in this like despair and negative mindset. And once again, Jesus is just going to surprise them. Though it's at this point that the disciples sort of drop out of the story altogether, and they're not mentioned or heard from until we see them moving on to another town. In verse 17, the story continues. Now, when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. There's our timeline. 2 days and then 4 days. He's been dead for a little while now. There's no question if he's just a bit sick or sleeping real hard. No, he's actually dead. His heart, it's stopped, and his body is doing what bodies do after being dead for 4 days. And everybody know he's dead, and everybody sees where he's buried. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off. So I did a little map thing just to check. La Rosa's right by the interstate is about 2 miles. So we're about 2 miles from La Rosa's or Wings and Rings if you prefer that more. And many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him. She rushed out to him. But Mary remained seated at the house. Remember, last time it was Mary who was staying awfully close to Jesus, but this time it's Martha rushing out to him. Why is she rushing? Let's read what she has to say. She said to the Lord, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. I can hear the grief. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Grief mixed with faith. Now, we live in a fairly direct culture. If you want something, oftentimes here we are encouraged to speak our mind, to say what we want plainly. I prefer that, actually. Um, but in this time and in this culture, the way you asked something from a benefactor, it was in a roundabout sort of ways, sort of suggesting or maybe very lightly asking. But the request is still clear in the hearers of this kind of communication. And it appears like Martha is asking for something in a roundabout sort of way. And Jesus answers her, "Your brother will rise again." That's what she kind of wanted, right? But her mind wasn't quite grasping that that was possible. Um, but she was in grief and in faith, and she was kind of in turmoil. But her mind wasn't quite able to clearly hear what Jesus is saying. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. She does have faith in the teaching of the resurrection. She believes it. Isn't this often our answer too? That we are placing our hope in that final resurrection? She's just in this deep place of grief and loss as well. But what Jesus is actually saying is, no, I'm about to raise him up right now, right in front of you. But she didn't quite catch it. But Jesus is going to use this miracle, as he does with just about all of his miracles, to make a validation or a testimony to the teaching that he's about to give. And the forthcoming miracle was probably about as most impressive and significant besides his own resurrection, like we've said before. Listen to what teaching Jesus is about to be backing up with this miracle. Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live." Now, a few years back, we did a whole series on these "I am" statements. These are big statements. This "I am" is an ego, a me, and there's an awful lot of rhyming with God's self-designation of Yahweh. I am that I am. And there's a number of them, about 7 through John. And here we are at one of the big ones. I am the resurrection and the life. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe that? This? This is the main thing. This is what this whole story is surrounding, and this is the teaching that is at the heart, that is the core of this miracle. This is what we're supposed to take away from this whole chapter. This whole story revolves around these words of Jesus. He is the resurrection, and He is the life. And whoever believes in Him, yeah, he might die, but he's going to live again. And whoever lives and believes in Him shall not truly ever actually die. Martha knows this is going to happen eventually, but she's about to realize it's going to happen right now. And what she didn't realize is that this resurrection, both now and future, is going to be through Jesus. Jesus is a major part of the resurrection. And if you believe in Jesus, you too can have that life. So, what is Martha's response? She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world." You see those titles pulled forward again. You see, Martha demonstrates the faith that the disciples ought to have had. And here she confesses what this whole Gospel of John is looking for all of us readers to see and confess as well. Listen to what John says at the end. But these things are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in His name. And these are the words coming off of Martha's mouth. Beautiful. When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." We don't know if Jesus actually said that or not. Maybe he did. Maybe she's just kind of caught up in the moment. But when she hears it, Mary rises quickly and goes out to Jesus, went out to him. Now, when Jesus had not yet come into the village, so he's still outside, but he was still in the place where Martha had met him. So he's just kind of hanging out outside of the home. Now, when the Jews who were in the house consoling her saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Grief was often handled in a much more cathartic way in these times and in this culture, and grieving had a much more open and quick process. There was at least a week of open grieving, and they were able to grieve well, oftentimes much faster than sometimes we are able to, as we process real and hard losses. But one of those common features is you would have people in your community coming and visiting and spending some time alongside you throughout that week. And so these are likely some of those people that are with her as they're coming out, the Jews that were in her house, consoling her. And they wanted to follow her. Now, when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." You can just hear the brokenness in her heart. Mary is usually the one eagerly sitting at his feet, is now sort of crumbling in grief. And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. Most translations um, have this wording, and this wording is sort of a gentler version of "he was angry." Jesus in this text and in a couple verses later, has sort of anger. And this has been confusing for commentators and for studiers. What is Jesus angry about? Could it be their unbelief? Perhaps. He was there to raise Lazarus from the dead, and the people close to him didn't believe that he was doing it. And Mary, having come, is weeping. Martha expressed faith, but Mary just expresses sorrow and kind of blames him for her loss. Maybe that's it. Or maybe he's just angry at the damage that Satan and loss and death has done to his loved ones. It could also be that maybe he's upset that the Jews have followed him, that this was something done in private, that she was talked to in private, and they're surrounding and not giving her a moment of privacy. Not really sure for sure, but the text is pretty clear. He kind of got angry at this point. And so he says, "Where have you laid him?" And they said, "Lord, come and see." And then we hit perhaps one of the more powerful verses in our Bibles. The God of creation, the, the God in the flesh, who's about to raise his friend from the dead, is standing at his grave, and, and he cries. This isn't the bawling, uncontrolled wailing. This is the quiet weeping. Sometimes, even though you know things are going to be okay, it still hurts and it's still sad. And the suffering of those around us it's real. Jesus knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, and it would all be over here in a couple minutes, but he still wept. It's okay to weep. It's okay to cry. It's okay to mourn. In fact, Jesus taught this. Blessed are those who mourn, because they can be comforted, will be comforted. I don't think that Jesus wept at his own loss of his friend Lazarus. He was going to see him in just a few minutes. But, but perhaps at the pain that the people that he loved and loved him were in that moment experiencing. See, Jesus isn't a stoic. He's not cold and removed and distant from our suffering. God isn't remote and emotionally removed from our suffering. It grieves him. It grieves him that those he loves suffers. And Jesus is about to walk into it himself. God is with us, even in our temporary sorrows. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But, there's always a couple in the crowd. Some of them said, "Couldn't he have opened the eyes of the blind man, also have kept this man from dying?" In that tender moment, you got these cynics pointing out their little defeater arguments. People seem to have lost their sense of compassion. But Jesus gets angry for the second time, deeply moved again. He's angry. Now, I imagine maybe some of the Jews didn't realize what they were saying when they were saying, "Well, couldn't he?" Sometimes I've said stuff before that's sort of rather insensitive, and I didn't realize it was insensitive. And there's a real good chance that you have too, unless you're way better at that than I am, but I doubt it. I bet we're all kind of bad at that at times. But this one's particularly bad, right? Like, at least most of us would have sensed, hey, don't say that. This is not the time. But it is what it is. And they said it. And so comes now to the tomb, and a cave, a stony inlay, and it was sealed up and closed. And so Jesus says, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, in case you mixed up which Marthas they were, but this is somebody who knows him. This isn't just, oh yeah, don't forget who she is. Uh, she's been with him. She's been through this whole process. She said to him, "Lord, um, by now there's going to be an odor. It's been 4 days." Um, not to get graphic. The body breaks down kind of in predictable ways, and it can go faster or slower if it's cooler or warmer or humid, things like that. Palestine, it's pretty warm and arid, and it's pretty common for the odor to start around 12 to 24 hours. 1 to 3 days, it's pretty strong, and 3 to 5 days, it's overwhelming. Um, so opening this door where Lazarus' body was kind of doing the things that it does, it would be like several times stronger than when you're driving past that power plant when it's running full steam and it's humid outside. You know it. It's everywhere and you can't get away from it. You're turning off the air conditioner, trying to get away. It would have been awful. And that's not a thing you want to experience with a loved one. Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus, lifting up his eyes, and said, and Jesus often does his miracles by prayer, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this on account of the people who are standing around, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said these things, he got loud. He cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The man who had died came out. His hands and his feet were bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." You ever seen that before? I've never seen that before. They've never seen that before. This man has a power over life and death. Would this change your mind about who Jesus is? If you were standing next to Mary and Martha and you witnessed this occur, how would you react or respond? How did the Jews react and respond? Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, they believed. They finally believed in him. But not all of them. Some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. "Hey guys, we might have a problem here." So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, "Okay, what are we going to do? This man performs a whole bunch of signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone's going to believe in him. And the Romans will come and take both our place and our nation." This is a key piece. Don't slip over this verse. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all. He's going to he's going to take charge. He's going to solve this problem. He knows right what to do to take care of this Jesus problem. Nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish." He's saying it is politically expedient that we skip over all the legal important reasons, and we just put this man to death. And it's because the ends justify the means. It's better that we lose one of our people than our whole nation be stripped away from us because the Romans come in. We can't let this guy gather a following. He'll take our place and our nation and he'll destroy it because the Romans will come in and take it from us. We've got to kill him. And it's unjust, yes, but the ends will end up better and they'll justify what we're doing here. But here's such a neat little spot. He didn't say of his own accord, but being high priest, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation. Oh man, sometimes God is just brilliant all the time, but this is one of them. And not only for the nation, or the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. See, they were thinking of this on the physical level, on the political level. But his words also were true on the spiritual level in reverse. He just didn't see it. He was stuck in the earthly. But through this injustice, God was going to justify people from all nations and draw for himself people from all over the world. God was going to, through the means, justify the person. Through injustice. So from that day on, the Jews made plans. We're going to kill him. And it's at this point in the story of Jesus' life that there's a major shift. And from here, there's sort of a one-way train to the cross. Jesus has finally tipped the scales. It's still day, but night is coming. He's been guarded for years, leading up to the final confrontation and this final moment. And now he's peeled back the curtain. He's opened the gates. He's saying, "Here I am. How will you react to me?" Some Jews believed, and some killed him. Jesus' miracles were amazing, were powerful. But isn't it interesting that different people would react completely differently after they watched a miracle of Jesus? You see, some people would see a miracle and their hearts would melt and yield, and they believed in him, while others would harden their hearts and resist even more. This was the case in this story because they're protecting something they wanted more. They wanted their influence, they wanted their power, they wanted their possessions and their nation. They realized that this was an incredible thing he did, but they were going to lose their own followers, their own privilege, their own place if they let this keep going. It was better that they kill him and keep what they had. They better that one man should die for the people and not let the nation perish. The high priest was trying to figure out his temporary solution. He was fixing the sensor on his washing machine. Jesus was thinking of an eternal solution, one that would solve the problem forever. It's better that I lay down my life and surrender to this injustice in order to provide that justification for all of God's children, from this nation and from all the others, to save them from condemnation. Caiaphas spoke true words. He just didn't understand all that he was saying. Lazarus died again. All the people he healed died again. That wasn't the point. It was aiming at the point, but it wasn't quite the point. And I wish this was the only time this kind of thing happened. But it's continuing for centuries. Often Christians suffer for doing good at the hands of people thinking they're doing an injustice for the greater good. They grab on to the ends and then believe that it justifies the means. And you'll hear that all over the world because it's a very common way of thinking. That the outcomes make however we get there okay. I'm sorry, it's not how it is in truth. The ends don't justify the means justify the person. And even then, everyone stands condemned before God. And in the end, only Jesus justifies anyone. Because only he was truly a just person. Only he lived that life without fault or blame. And he gave up his life in injustice to justify those who have faith in him, that they might live forever. And in that salvation is the life that knows no end, the life that cannot be stomped out or squelched or suffocated or snuffed out. Even if someone kills our body, they cannot touch our souls. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Perhaps the greatest I am statement in the gospel. And this is the miracle, perhaps the greatest of his miracles, outside of his own resurrection, that's trying to show everyone that he is the author and provider of life, even after death. But just because we see a miracle doesn't mean that our hearts are changed before God. It just means that we have the opportunity to see and overcome a rebellious heart and turn to God and be saved. But as we've seen, many didn't go that way. There's a desire among many who are unsure whether God is real or not to just see a miracle. If they could just see a miracle, then they would believe. Well, maybe. But the truth is, a whole bunch of people did see miracles. They were amazed, and they were unchanged. Remember the parable of the rich man and Lazarus? And the man's in torment, and he said, just send somebody back to warn my family. You remember what Abraham says, or Jesus says? I wouldn't believe even if they saw somebody raised from the dead. That's coming home to roost in this miracle and in his own coming up. They marveled. They were amazed. They didn't repent. They saw a glimpse of the glory of God, but they didn't soften their hearts and submit to him. Sin stayed rooted. Miracles are incredible things, and Jesus did a whole bunch of them. And his miracles were to add testimony to the truth of his teaching. They weren't the ends. They weren't the goal. They were supporting, aiming, helping, directing towards this heart change. And it was his teaching that penetrated deeper into hearts than the amazing wonders that he performed. How many amazing movies have you seen that you thoroughly enjoyed and you don't remember who you went with? And after you watched it, absolutely nothing in your life changed. You act the same way, you treat people the same way, you behave the same way. It didn't change a thing. It's entirely possible to see Jesus' miracles in real time, be amazed, and walk away relatively unchanged. Which is why Jesus didn't always do them. He was careful. He didn't show them all the time and at certain points to certain people, to unbelieving people in particular. And that's partly why he saved this very significant resurrection miracle until this point where he was ready to step on the gas. There's many more miracles that Jesus did that we didn't cover in the last 4 weeks. This sample is a pretty good start. So, what do we learn about Jesus? Jesus was a miracle worker. Even those who didn't believe in Jesus acknowledge that he did some pretty amazing things. They don't want to believe him, they don't even want him to be supported, but he's doing something incredible. And unless we do something, he's gonna win over all kinds of people. There's not magic tricks that are deceiving a few people in a back room. These are publicly mass witnessed miracles. Things like feeding 5,000 people in a desert with no food, healing a man born blind, calming a storm at a spoken word, bringing somebody back from the life, raising a man who was dead and buried for 4 days in front of a crowd of people. Some who didn't even believe in him, some who opposed him, but all who acknowledged Lazarus was raised from the dead. Jesus was a miracle worker. And Jesus' miracles were usually in the service of his teaching. We don't want to see the miracles as our major goal because they weren't his. Jesus didn't do miracles just to wow crowds. He was proving a point in what he said was true, to demonstrate that he really was from God and the things he spoke were true. Many things in heavenly places that can't be proved. But Jesus does things in our world that are impossible without power from God to show that what he said about the heavenly realm is true too. Jesus did mostly healing miracles. Huge majority of the miracles that Jesus performed were done to heal people because he cared and he was symbolizing that he's a healer. He cares to heal and to help and to bring restoration and wholeness. That being very true, he healed physically a lot of people that would later die. The physical healing was pointing towards the spiritual and ultimate healing that he would offer people. Physical healing is always temporary. Jesus wanted to bring healing that made an ultimate difference, the healing to end all healings. And he demonstrates that in the resurrection. Lazarus died a second time. Lazarus' resurrection was only a taste of what is to come, a confirmation that Jesus does indeed hold the power to bring to life in his hands. Our resurrection is the healing to end all healings. And that heavenly healing is only available to those who have had spiritual cleansing and to heal all those who would come to him. He took on the suffering, the injustice, and death to save all of us from it. And he desires to rescue people from death. He really does. The pain causes him both sorrow and anger. His love for his children is great. And he said, I'll take on the suffering myself. I'll die the death so that you can have life and be healed from this whole situation once and for all. He is the healer, and he wants to heal you and me. Heal us of our sin, the infections of our souls, and save our souls from the eternal separation from the source of life himself. And then bring us the new life and the new bodies that are free from the curses of this world when the fix is permanent. But why did he delay? Why didn't he go right away? Why didn't he heal Lazarus before he died? glory of God, that you might know that Jesus is the Son of God. God's wisdom and his timing are on a whole nother level. And sometimes we can choose to trust him and believe him, or struggle like the disciples did. Jesus will solve. He will come, even if he delays a little in coming. And the end for us is not death. The end of the story is life. And if that's true for you, then you can rest in that. If you have yet to believe in Jesus, man, make today the day. Life can begin now. Next week, we're going to be looking more at some of those core ideas of his teaching. While most of what we do year round is to teach about his teachings, and there's no shortage of material through the New Testament, we're going to attempt to look at some of the big ideas of what Jesus taught most while he was through his ministry. I invite you to do that as we come back next week. Would you pray with me? God, we thank you that you are life, that you are healing, and that you are compassionate, that you care. And God, we thank you that you would lay down your life to save the many, and that many is us. God, we praise you, we honor you, we give you glory. It's in your precious name we pray.